Good afternoon, I'm Karen Kozia Phillips. C News is live.
And I'm Nasira Mohammed with sports.
To the top of the newscast, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley will address the post-cabinet media conference this afternoon. However, the statement from the office of the Prime Minister did not say what he will be speaking about, but it's speculated that he will respond to statements made by President Anthony Carmona about a breach in confidentiality after a letter sent from the office of the President to the Prime Minister was leaked to the media. It surrounds a meeting held with Mr. Carmona and the Minister of National Security, Edmund Dern. And C News will have live coverage of the post-cabinet media conference. And questions are now being asked of the Prime Minister. He needs to respond to statements made by President Anthony Carmona about a breach in confidentiality. During an address to the nation on Wednesday, the President addressed his statements made in the public domain about a meeting held with the Minister of National Security. He said he had informed the Prime Minister about the meeting before it was held, and after that he sent a letter explaining what was discussed. Now President Carmona raised questions over how the details of the private letter sent to the Prime Minister found itself in the hands of other people.
Therefore extremely concerned that missive which was sent to the Honorable Prime Minister under strictest and private confidentiality have found itself in the hands of the press. I am even more taken aback to have received a letter from the Honorable Prime Minister which calls into question the constitutional propriety of my holding the said meeting, especially since I had his support to conduct same.
According to attorney at law Martin George, this statement by the President raises greater concerns, especially since both the Prime Minister and the President are supposed to meet on a weekly basis for discussions.
If there is not that feeling that they are on the same page, particularly on a factual basis, then I'm not sure that it necessarily, bodes well for the country, going forward. I mean, unless there is some rapprochement that is made, between the two, maybe behind closed doors, to resolve this and to be able to move forward.
He said this matter is far from over.
Reading between the lines of what was said by the President, it seemed very clear that he was basically throwing down the gauntlet to the Prime Minister. So, of course, it's never a happy scenario when high office holders appear to be in stark contrast, especially in factual matters. So one hopes that this can be resolved in a manner that is befitting the offices that both gentlemen hold.
Harvey Boris also added his voice to the discussion, saying such a situation does not speak well for the democracy of the country. He said there should be consequences for anyone who lied to the population.
This, to us, is really a complete, misuse of the trust of the population that was given. One of the persons was duly elected and then appointed Prime Minister. One was appointed President, as the case may be. Those are the two highest offices in the land. And therefore, to have this type of literally doghouse fight, it is something to which it is unfortunate, and eventually it should be brought to an end as soon as possible.
He explained that either party must put their evidence to back up their claims in the public domain. Mary-Therese Bernard, C News.
To other news now, the body of a man was found at Choro Bridge, Freeport, and police believe it was dumped there early this morning. Reports say the body was discovered at about 6:30 a.m. by a school bus driver. The body was wrapped in a plastic bag. It was clad in a green and red striped T-shirt and a blue three-quarter cargo pants. The man is said to be of African descent and estimated to be in his 40s. Police are continuing their investigations. So what's happening with Tropical Storm Matthew? Well, our meteorologist Ian Wallace is here to tell us more.
Thank you, Karen. Well, as of 11 a.m., Tropical Storm Matthew remains such. It does have added winds, though, 110 kilometers per hour with some higher gusts. It's moving west at 24 kilometers per hour, but is set to strengthen gradually as we go through the next few hours. In fact, it may well become a hurricane later today. Currently over the eastern Caribbean Sea, it is moving away from St. Lucia. Current winds right now about 42 kilometers per hour in St. Lucia, but it's still quite gusty at times, looking at 60 kilometers per hour out there in St. Vincent, and that was as of 9 a.m. In terms of the rainfall, St. Lucia received over 330 millimeters, and nearly 277 millimeters of that just fell in a 12-hour period. So obviously they definitely have the time to recover as we go through the next few days. So this is where the center of Tropical Storm Matthew is. It is obviously clearing the eastern Caribbean. We should be seeing some brightness of the skies as we get towards possibly later today going into Friday. But basically the current track of Tropical Storm Matthew is set to push it further towards the Western Caribbean. It may likely become a hurricane by tonight, and then its track beyond there is set to push it possibly along a northwestern curve, maybe even northerly out towards Jamaica. So they'll be watching this quite closely. Meanwhile, of course, many of the Caribbean islands, even as we go through tomorrow, we're still likely to see a few of those showers. Some of them are turning thundery, but for the most part, we should be seeing some brightness as we get towards many of the islands, particularly towards the middle of Friday. Now, in terms of the track, we talked about it as early as next week. Jamaica could be in the crosshairs. It's quite a wide track. There's quite a lot of error in this system, so we're likely to see closer towards Friday or Saturday. We'll tighten in on that, and we'll likely see if it's going to either Jamaica or possibly further north out towards Port-au-Prince and Haiti. So that's the latest on the Tropical Storm Matthew. Karen.
Thank you, Ian. Remember, you're watching the CNews Live Report at noon, and you can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website at ctvtt.com, or you can check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at CNews Live. The San Fernando City Council says the decision to suspend wrecking is working well so far, despite some motorists who are yet to respect the laws. In a statement, Mayor Kazim Hossain said those outliers who ignore the traffic laws will be dealt with by the police service. He said both the TTPS and the city police must be commended on their efforts to enforce the traffic laws in the city. Wrecking in the city was suspended from September 1st. With the highly anticipated fiscal budget due to be presented tomorrow, the Cannabis and You Group is hoping that government will consider the legalization of marijuana in the future. Speaking on Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago, the group's PRO said marijuana is falsely represented as a negative drug.
Most of the things that people believe about cannabis is things that have been spread on the media, a lot of television commercials and stuff like that against cannabis use, and they basically criminalized and demonized a harmless plant.
He said the drug can have several benefits to one's health as well as the economy, but he believes the main reason the drug has not been legalized is due to its threat to the pharmaceutical industry.
We're having all these, fights and arguments on who is right about legalization, who is wrong, because these people just have one view, and that's money. It all boils down to money.
The NGO was launched in June of this year, and Mr. Baksh said they intend to continue to rally for the drug's legalization. Now here's a look at what's happening throughout the Caribbean with the passage of Tropical Storm Matthew.
One person is now dead in St. Vincent after being crushed by a boulder due to the passage of Tropical Storm Matthew. The person, who is believed to be a teenager in the 10th grade, died yesterday when a boulder dislodged and crushed him against a house. The Meteorological Service in Jamaica has continued the severe weather alert for Jamaica as Tropical Storm Matthew continues moving westward through the eastern Caribbean and could become a hurricane by tonight. Matthew is moving towards the west near 26 kilometers an hour. This general westward motion with some decrease in forward speed is expected during the next couple of days. The Jamaican Met Office says the center of Tropical Storm Matthew is forecast to pass through the north of Aruba, Bonaire and Curacao on Friday. Forecast models expect the storm to continue on its westward path on Saturday and then turn towards the north, bringing it closer to the Jamaica area on Sunday and Monday. The all clear has been given in Barbados as the airport reopened and businesses also will be open today, but schools will remain closed. St. Vincent and the Grenadines are on lockdown after experiencing heavy winds and rains overnight. The neighboring French islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique also experienced heavy winds and rains plus flooding. Many communities in St. Lucia remain without water and electricity as quite a few electricity poles were destroyed during the passage of Storm Matthew last night. Citizens there are being urged to proceed with due caution, especially around power lines and flooded areas. Dominica Prime Minister Roosevelt Scarrett is urging persons on that island to stay indoors as heavy rain caused flooding in some areas.
And as we continue to track what's happening with Tropical Storm Matthew, we speak now with a journalist from St. Lucia, Jay Ollingseed, to tell us how or if the island was affected as the storm passed. Good afternoon, Mr. Ollingseed. What can you tell us?
Hi, good afternoon. What we could report on now is that the all clear has been given and, persons, as always, a bit nosy, going out to see, the level of damage. There's no major damage to that we could report on at present. No fatalities recorded. What we see is that major flooding took place in some communities. We also had a few landslides along the way. Some of the roads throughout the island was a bit impassable because of, fallen trees and stuff. All that has been cleared. From morning, we had persons from the Ministry of Infrastructure on the ground, working really hard to resolve those situations. We still have persons, unclogging drains in the affected communities. So we are safe in St. Lucia. And no fatalities, like I said, were recorded, and it's no level of damage, severe damage that we could see, in previous years, that of Hurricane Thomas in 2010.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ollingseed. At least 3 people are reported to have been killed and more than 100 injured, many of them critically, after a commuter train crashed into a railway station in the U.S. state of New Jersey. Here's an eyewitness account.
Took a walk by the river for a few minutes before boarding the PATH train to get from Jersey to Manhattan. And as I re-entered the terminal, I'm standing on top of the stairway that leads down to the PATH train, which is a subway system that goes into Manhattan, and there was some screaming and people just looking over toward the right where the trains come in, and I'm basically adjacent to track 2, and on track number 5 I looked over to see what everybody else was looking at, and I saw a train that quote unquote simply would not stop. And for whatever the reasons turn out to be, that train did not stop. And I saw it sounded like an explosion, but really it wasn't. It was a very loud noise as it went into the support system up on top of the concourse and quite possibly into the reception area. The roof, there's a roof that is on top of the train tracks, and I think that some of maybe a pillar or 2 had hit the ceiling of the train. But at that point in time, there were about 100 people that were either coming up those stairs, and we all pushed and shoved in a good way as we tried each other as a mass group to escape the area.
And here now is a brief look at some other international news.
At least 30 people are missing after flooding and landslides in southeast China caused by torrential rain. Rescuers are searching for survivors in Zhejiang province after hillsides collapsed onto villages. This is off the back of Typhoon Megi. The storm has forced the closure of schools and businesses. There have also been hundreds of flights cancelled. The net worth of Donald Trump, the Republican presidential candidate, has slipped by an estimated $800 million over just the last year. That's according to figures published by Forbes magazine. It attributes the loss largely to the declining value of New York property prices. It still reckons Mr. Trump's worth $3.7 billion. The European golfer Danny Willett has said sorry for an article written by his brother in which American Ryder Cup fans were called a baying mob of imbeciles. Schoolteacher Peter Willett wrote the piece for a golf magazine. Well, his brother Danny said, "I apologise, it's not the thoughts of me or the team." New research has found that a small proportion of children with HIV do not develop AIDS even without treatment. Tests on 170 HIV-positive South African children revealed that the immune systems of some of them were apparently able to coexist with the virus.
Well, Nasira Mohammed joins us now to tell us what's happening in the world of sport. Nasira.
Well, Karen, our athletes from Rio are back and they've had a lot to say based on their performances and their training practices leading up to the Rio Games. No time for sports. It was hailed as an historic occasion to bring most of the stakeholders in local sport around the table to discuss the issues which hampered performances as the just concluded Olympic Games in Rio. It was a veritable who's who in local sport. And while the administrators had their say, the athletes were the ones who took center stage and gave those gathered an earful.
And I'm happy to see so many different sports, elements of sports, doctors, physiotherapists, psychologists and so on, media. But I just want all the people in the room to remember that part of our vision moving forward, this government and my vision, is for the first time in a long while to be athlete-centered. So whatever are the end results of this, and we know all of us have a key part to play with that, the athletes who are here, who are not here, must be the beneficial persons at the end of the day of this process. And let us stay in the background and let them be the stars.
It was designed to set the tone for the exercise, which was billed as a roundtable review of the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, and several of the key stakeholders in sport locally gathered. But the athletes and their concerns took center stage as they didn't waste the chance to get their concerns off their chest.
Take my individual story. I am an Olympic gold medalist, and in the past 4 years building up to Rio Olympic Games, I have seen no development, no help towards athletes. You cannot tell me you want me to repeat as an Olympic gold medalist, and I haven't seen any help, any structure put in place for me to repeat. So I don't understand when you come and you say that you want to learn, lessons learned, because obviously we aren't learning anything.
And to emphasize his point, he related his recent experience leading up to the Rio Games, which almost didn't happen for him.
I had to bring my own physiotherapist, from Cuba, because if I did not bring my own physical therapist from Cuba, I would not be in this room today as a two-time Olympic medalist. And you need to understand that we have no structure, because I had injuries throughout the 2013-2014 period, and nobody offered me help. I am not all athletes going to be fortunate as me to have money to afford medical, to stay in a zone that we can compete with the rest of the world.
Also harping on the point of disrespect for the athletes and a failure to fully understand their needs was sprinter Emmanuel Calendar, who wasn't holding back.
Plenty of us in the room here are not really passionate about sport. We talk sport. We sit down, when they perform, yeah, Calendar, yeah, Keyshawn. And when after Keyshawn make one mistake down the road, you sit down and bad talk him. Then you want Keyshawn to come in your physio room and work with you. But Keyshawn doesn't get back word of what you said 2 weeks ago or further down the road. So we have created a generational curse from year to year that's been happening over and over and time again. And we don't intend to change it.
Another star athlete expressing grave concern about the lack of communication and interest in the athletes is female sprinter Simoy Hackett, who said she was almost alone in dealing with her injuries recently and wondered about how our athletes are treated by officials.
In 2006, we went to World Juniors and we got 2 gold medals, Rennie Kwa in the 400 and Rhonda Watkins. I want somebody to answer, where is Rhonda Watkins, where is Joel Romain, he's dead. Venice Frederick, Sade St. Louis, Brittany St. Louis, Kamara Duran, Zuede Hewitt, Mariba Moraine, Joel Dillon, all of these young athletes who had great perspective, potential to help Trinidad and Tobago develop. Where are those athletes now? The system has failed them. Correct. And that's the honest truth. No one is coming together and say, okay, let me check up on this athlete, what are they doing?
The final session was designed to look at recommendations and the way forward given the concerns expressed, and more importantly, to learn from past mistakes to ensure that our teams do much better in Tokyo and beyond.
Well, 4 cricketers from Trinidad and Tobago has been signed as franchise players for the 2016 edition of the Bangladesh Premier League, which bowls off from November 4th. Leading the quartet is veteran all-rounder Dwayne Bravo, who is joined by Evan Lewis, Nicholas Puran and Kevon Cooper. Bravo and Lewis will play for the Dhaka Dynamites, but Lewis is in possession of a retainer contract by the TTCB and may have to get an exemption certificate of clearance before participating. If he should be cleared to play in the T20 League, he will miss part of the regional professional 4-day setup. Puran, who excelled at the recent Caribbean Premier League, has been snapped up by the Khulna Titans and joined there by his Queen's Park teammate Kevon Cooper. Other West Indians signed up for the league this time around, and they are Chris Gale and Andrew Russell of Jamaica, Dwayne Smith of Barbados, as well as Darren Sammy and Gidron Pope from the Windward Islands. Several other Red Force stars are in line for contracts when the BPL holds its player draft. 3 former officials of Kenya's disbanded Olympic Committee were charged on Wednesday with theft and fraud offences relating to this year's Games in Rio de Janeiro. The East African nation bagged its biggest ever haul of medals in Brazil, but organizational problems plagued preparations for the event. A charge sheet showed that 2 of the officials, Francis Paul and Pius Ocheng, are accused of failing to declare uniforms donated by sports good manufacturer Nike between June and July. A 3rd official, Stephen Arab Soy, was charged with 2 counts of theft involving more than $252,000 and other related offenses. Part of the money was meant to meet accommodation costs for officials accompanying the Kenyan team in Rio de Janeiro. All pleaded not guilty and were released on bail of 200,000 Kenyan shillings each, with trial to start on October 24th.
And Wallace joins us again to tell us what we can expect this afternoon as it relates to weather.
Well, many of us got up this morning to some thundery downpours. You can just see them there in the red splotches coming from north to south, moving across from East Trinidad into the western areas. The atmosphere remains unstable and there's still a lot of moisture around, all courtesy basically of the tail end of Tropical Storm Matthew. Bear in mind that the center of Tropical Storm Matthew is well over 600 kilometers out towards our north, and it is not necessarily affecting Trinidad and Tobago in terms of tropical storm conditions, but the likelihood of still seeing some thunder showers throughout this afternoon due to the daytime heating and that instability is definitely likely. We can see here, at least for Friday, we should be seeing some brightness coming through from time to time. Only a few showers likely as we get towards the end of the working week, and Saturday should see some brightness as well, as will most of the Eastern Caribbean as they clear out from the effects of Matthew by later today and going into early on Friday. So looking then right now at Piarco, still a couple of thunder showers are rolling through into Crown Point. It's a bit brighter, but definitely look for the showers to come through, definitely into areas along the hills of Tobago, the main ridge in particular, possibly a high of 29 degrees Celsius, and we'll see fairer settled conditions after nightfall and definitely into Friday. Across in Trinidad, still gusty showers are likely, especially along the hills and around the western areas of the country, although you will likely see spits and spots of showers as you go through the afternoon. But again, we should be seeing a gradual clearing of the skies through late tonight. So, for those heading offshore, rough seas are still going to plague boaters and mariners. 2 to 3 meters out in the Caribbean, closer to 3.5 further out in the Atlantic. So be mindful about this and definitely take those precautions if you are a sea bather. And obviously, I don't think that the lifeguards will be allowing most people into the waters, at least for the next couple of days. So that's your local weather, and that's it from me. And we have more news with Karen.
Thank you, Ian. Well, that brings us to the end of the C News report at noon. C News, powered by our team of journalists and producers across the Republic and the region, on television, radio, and online.
C News, your country, our job.